Hello everyone, welcome back to Nintendo Everything Refresh. This is the brand new podcast here on Nintendo Everything where we refresh your memory on what is just going on in the world of Nintendo. There's always something, and you never know when the week starts how it's going to go, but this week we got quite a bit to talk about. So let's just jump right in. But before we do so, we have got, as always, a very talented group of folks here from all over the world. We've got Dennis Gagliardato.
Hello, hello.
Dennis, did I say your name right?
No, yeah, it was perfect. No, you got it perfect, man, which is like great because most people it's almost like they have to go and like get a degree sometimes to say it. Like growing up, I swear people have had like it's taken them months to like get it down, and I'm like, look, if you can just like see it phonetically, it's really not that big of a deal. I promise you. And yeah, no, dude, you nailed it.
Beautiful. We have also got Luiz Estrella.
Hey everyone.
And we've got Nicolas Chadet.
Hey everyone, glad to be here.
So let's kick things off with this week we got a surprise trailer for Fire Emblem Warriors 3 Hopes. This is the Musou spin-off to Fire Emblem 3 Houses, and it's kind of a Dynasty Warriors style game. It's coming out in June, and I know some of the folks here are Fire Emblem fans and are pretty excited about this. Dennis, are you looking forward to this game?
Yeah, very much. I mean, I'm just a fan of Musou games in general, and then I'm a fan of Fire Emblem, so, put those two things together, and absolutely, I'm already in. Like, say less. Even if they never showed anything, it'd still be a day one purchase. You know what I mean? It's just like, show me a logo like you did with Metroid Prime. Okay, no problem. I'm there, So it's not anything I'm going to ask too much about. But, yeah, I loved the initial Fire Emblem Warriors, and I know for a fact I'm going to love this one. It looks like they definitely like upped the budget like tenfold this time around compared to Fire Emblem Warriors the first time around. So, but it'll be interesting for sure because since they're kind of doing the whole 3 houses thing, they kind of have a source material there to work with versus Fire Emblem Warriors where it was just kind of like, all right, here's, this sort of brand new story and we just have to find a way to sort of implement this cast of characters that has spanned now well over 20 years, so
something crazy.
Yeah. But 3 Houses was such a big hit that I know that this will immediately sell more than Fire Emblem Warriors, and I have no doubt people are gonna love it, whether they're jumping in for the first time or they've just kind of been with the series for a while, and I've always loved Omega Force and the way they sort of handle their sort of vision for hack and slash, because there's plenty of developers out there that do hack and slash, but there's always been something special with the Musou games and the way they've handled the fluidity and the usually gigantic cast of characters, especially if we're talking Dynasty Warriors, which can span close to 200 if not more sometimes.
Right.
So yeah, Fire Emblem Warriors, 3 Houses, this new one will be fantastic. I'm super stoked.
Yeah, although, I mean, I know, the last kind of Dynasty Warriors style game that Nintendo put out, Age of Calamity, the Hyrule Warriors game, that one didn't have a huge cast of characters. It was pretty much, just only characters from Breath of the Wild. So it wasn't a huge pool. I mean, maybe a little more than a dozen, I want to say, just off the top of my head.
Yeah, that one was much more streamlined, and I think just to sort of, you want to tailor it to that sort of narrative of being part of Breath of the Wild, right? So that made sense versus kind of a similar situation, right, where the initial Hyrule Warriors, it was just like, all right, let's take these cast of characters and let's just go crazy with it with, an original story as well. Yeah, exactly. That's a perfect way to put it. So yeah, much more fan service, and even some original characters as well, like Lana and what was the other one? The antagonist, Sia.
Sia.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So and they were fantastic. I loved them. So it's always there's pros and cons to it, right? Because when you have something that you want to base your game off of, you sort of have to follow that source material versus where you have creative freedom. So that's my only sort of, gripe with, licensed Musou games where it's like, they're going to have to follow some sort of formula, right? To sort of be sort of in line with the overall structure of whatever property they're sort of adapting. So,
yeah. Well, and I think that's a great point because, and Nicolas, I think, as someone who is currently playing through Xenoblade again, you might like this. There are 3 story paths in this Fire Emblem spin-off game. Do you think you would play through all 3 story paths?
Oh God, don't put that evil on me. Possibly, it seems like a lot though. But personally, I'm really looking forward to the game, especially after this new trailer, because it's giving me very strong Age of Calamity vibes, in the sense that it really feels like they are adapting Three Houses specifically into a Muso style. You can see in the trailer they added things like battalions and other Three Houses mechanics, and even from a story perspective, not to spoil some things from the trailer, but it looks like there's going to be genuine plot twists and like a different plot interpretation in the game. It makes me very interested in it from just a story perspective, which is not something I was expecting from a Muso game.
Right. Well, and that does kind of echo what they did with Age of Calamity, which kind of played around with, different versions of how the story could go. And so I wonder if they're going to kind of continue that trend with this one.
I hope they do, because I think, again, for me personally, like some of my least favorite Muso games are the ones that are almost a 1-1 conversion of what the original source material is, right? So I like when they sort of do take that sort of, again, I'll use the term creative freedom, where they just kind of implement something new to make it at least be a little bit refreshing and at least give you something new to look forward to, right? Versus like, you're playing the same game but in a different sort of genre, if you will. So it's almost like a been there, done that situation, and it's no different from just what a typical remake would be, right? Where, like, for example, Final Fantasy VII Remake is the first thing to come to mind, right? Where it's like, yeah, it's Final Fantasy VII, but the way you play it, it's not as traditional turn-based as it originally was on PS1, right? So you have more freedom in that regard, and which is fine. But again, if you've played the original, it's one of those been there, done that situations, and I personally I always look forward to something new and refreshing when I'm playing something. So that's just me, though.
Yeah, I think the thing that really drew me in, I mean, I am not a huge Fire Emblem fan yet. They are all like sitting on my 3DS, like waiting to be played. I'm hoping to get to some of them sooner rather than later.
Awakening is so good. Play Awakening at least, man.
What?
I was just saying, like, play Awakening at least. I love Fire Emblem Awakening.
Yeah.
That game is fantastic.
Oh yeah,
fantastic.
it's
a great one to start.
It is on my to play list in the very near future. But I am just always just so struck by just how great these games look. Like even back on the 3DS, and man, like this trailer, like I don't know if this is Nintendo's magic at work here or if it's more Koei Tecmo, but like man, I just think this game looks great. It seems like it's really pushing the Switch.
It's interesting because if I'm not mistaken, Koei Tecmo co-developed Three Houses, right?
Yes.
So they kind of have a hands on the original game. So it's interesting. Like Nicolas said, it seems to be a similar approach of Age of Calamity, that they are bringing a lot of elements from the original game, including the look of the engine and all of that. I'm really interested in the story because I don't know exactly if they already said how it's going to be, but it seems to be kind of a retelling of the original story, because there will be 3 different paths, and you seems to kind of repeat the events of going to the school and being with each one of the 3 houses. So I'm kind of interested to see how they will handle that. If there's going to be something similar to Age of Calamity with time travel or something like that to justify the story.
Yeah, it's I mean, again, as someone who's not super familiar with the series, like to me, it looked like it was going to be, just based on what I know about Three Houses, it almost looked like it was going to be more of a sequel. I didn't see anything in the trailer, at least, of the monastery from like Three Houses, for example. Like I know they mentioned in the trailer that there was like a base camp you could explore, but that sounded like a distinction to me from the original game and its setting. So I'm wondering if maybe it takes place after, or I don't know. Maybe someone can enlighten me.
So the idea is basically it's taking place at the start of Three Houses, but a different event has occurred which has caused a character that was not in Three Houses to survive. And they are now present, and they're the new main protagonist, basically. They're the purple-haired kid that showed up in the first trailer, and that's on the box art. And they're your new main protagonists, and they end up meeting the the three houses
Interesting.
instead
Kinda
of Violet.
alternate reality, something like that.
Yeah, and so that leads to like a different scenario with, I guess still a war, but not as much of a time skip, and everyone has different designs and whatnot.
Got it. Okay. Well, I'm definitely excited to hear what y'all think when the game comes out in June. I think it's going to be something that definitely gets people's Switches booted back up for the summer. We also got this last week an announcement for Bugsnax. Bugsnax was a PS5 exclusive for quite a while, and it was recently announced that the game is now coming to other consoles. It's coming to Nintendo Switch, and it is also coming to Xbox via Game Pass. Are you guys familiar with this game at all?
I never played it, but I remember seeing it. It was kind of a weird game because it was a PS5 exclusive, I remember seeing, and it was not the kind of game that would impress in the graphic department. So I thought it was kind of a weird game, and I never understood exactly how the game played, and I think that's kind of the point. You don't know exactly what the game is before actually playing it, because I would imagine it's a very different approach that the game take, and it's the kind of indie experience that I'm really interested in seeing, and I think it's a game that has probably will have no problem running on Switch, and seems to be a great addition.
Yeah, it's a weird game. I beat this game. I got it through PlayStation Plus. It was like a free game through PlayStation Plus for a little while, and it's interesting. It's a first-person game. It's got a lot of puzzle-solving elements, but it's also got a little like some light exploration. It's really hard to categorize. I think the writing and just kind of the bizarre story is the thing that caught a lot of people off guard. Like, it kind of starts as this whimsical kind of, oh, look, all these island residents are turning into food, but then there's really just kind of weird, dark undertones, and it gets strange very, very quickly. So if you're looking for something weird, I definitely recommend checking it out. The other thing that I think is making this release notable is that it's including some of the there's just some DLC released for it, which I think is why they're bringing it over now. It basically takes a lot of the characters in the game, and it's called the Isle of Big Snacks, and it just makes things bigger. It's like how they like Dynamaxed the Pokemon, you know. It's kind of like their version of that. But yeah, it seems like there's some excitement for this online. I mean, one of the things that really was getting people's attention for this game was just like the music and just how strange and surreal it is. So I think people will be in for a surprise.
It'll be interesting to see, just because I remember when the game came out, like, I mean, it was all I saw, especially like on Twitter for a while. Like, people were just talking about it. But again, because it was a PS5 launch title, and as is with most, newly released systems, generations primarily, you don't get, a gigantic library off the start unless you already have, that backwards compatibility to play around with. But otherwise, yeah, Bugsnax was one of the first ones to come out of maybe 4 or 5 other ones, probably alongside, Returnal and Ratchet and Clank, right? So,
Right.
Bugsnax, of course, was naturally going to be one of the games that people sort of gravitated towards, especially as a free PS Plus title. So, but I heard a lot of good things about it, and I know it was definitely something that was considered very weird. I remember when the initial trailer came out, and I just saw it, and I was just like, this looks odd, man. I don't even know if I'm really going to like it. But, with it coming out to Switch, obviously now it's going to reach a much larger audience, and it'll be available via Xbox Game Pass as well once it releases. So I'll give it a try for sure, through that platform, and, and then maybe I'll give my, a more... thorough sort of analysis, on the next podcast. So just to see how weird things really are with that game. So
I would be curious to hear what you think. Yeah, I think this is a good Game Pass game. I feel like that's, for the people who have the option, it seems like where people are going to want to check it out. Because it is kind of this like strange little indie game, and people, I love that. Don't get me wrong, but that's also something that like if people aren't really sure what it is, it seems like it might be a harder sell to just buy it outright on Switch rather than just check it out on Game Pass if you have that option.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those hit or miss situations where, like, if you don't make a good first impression off the bat, I don't think people are really going to take the time to really sit there and try to find that level of charm or fun for a game that's already so unorthodox as Bugsnax, So.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. Yeah, fortunately, it's pretty much a known quantity at this point. So the people who, the internet has had time to digest this game for the most part. So
For sure.
Shouldn't be too many crazy surprises overall. But speaking of surprises, something that kind of came out of left field last week. Pretty big potential for being an interesting story. Through some job listings, it was revealed that Bandai Namco is being contracted by Nintendo to produce some kind of remake or remaster of an action game. And that is all we know. And it opens up a lot of interesting possibilities.
Well, I was just going to say, like, that's so weird because I'm trying to think of, like, Nintendo's catalog of, older action titles. And Nintendo, when I think of Nintendo in terms of genre, my initial thought immediately is platformer. I think that's kind of how they made their name, is, when they started was platforming, right? With Mario, with Kirby. And it just sort of, and Yoshi, and, and even like the Wario games and things like that. And, they've dabbled in other stuff. But whenever I think of Nintendo games, I immediately think of like if there was one genre to sort of describe them, it would be platformers. So I'm just trying to think of something that would be considered action. But then again,
anything could be an action game. Like, that's such a vague term.
Yeah, that term has become so, like, flexible now.
Yeah.
And, like, that it could be anything. But my initial thought, honestly, is, probably to the disdain of a lot of people, but I would personally love to see it, just to see a more modern take on it and a more refined version, would be Star Fox Adventures. But that's just...
Oh.
That would be the most just... Man, if that was what it was, I don't even know how people would react to that. It would be like the strangest thing. Like, I feel like I could think of like a dozen other games that people like would expect before that. Not that Star Fox Adventures wouldn't be like worth it or anything, but it's just that would be crazy.
Yeah, it'd
Well,
be a
it's
very
certainly not
bizarre
gonna be-
move out of alt library to choose. Not like in terms of bringing back Star Fox, to bring it back through Adventures would be very odd.
It would be odd,
Oh,
yeah. But to
yeah.
be fair, there was a bit of a sort of, that beautiful time period of when you had essentially what was the best Star Fox game never made with Starlink, right? That was developed by Ubisoft, and on the Switch primarily,
Yeah.
you got to play as Star Fox, and what a beautiful, fantastic game that was. I was addicted to that game for a while, man. It was fantastic. It was like Star Fox and No Man's Sky put together, right? It was like the most beautiful thing.
Right. But
yeah,
again, literally anything could be an action game. Like, you could make a case
true.
that Yoshi is an action game. Like, you really could.
Nintendo
he's moving around.
Nintendo usually doesn't use the term platformer. They use action game. They consider Mario an actual game.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's true, yeah.
It's I saw a lot of people about Bandai Namco listing. I saw people talking about Kid Icarus, maybe.
Yes.
I think that would be... I mean, the
That'd be
Kid
a
Icarus
great
on 3DS for me would be a perfect port for Switch. The game already runs beautifully on the 3DS, and the biggest issue is only the controls. So on Switch in HD with 2 analogs, it would be just perfect. And I think Bandai Namco seems like a perfect name for a game like that. They are always working with Nintendo, and I think almost everything that Bandai Namco works with Nintendo, it comes out great. I mean, Smash or Pokken, a lot of the works that they did together, it always comes out great. So I'm really excited to see what this is about.
Yeah, it's also worth pointing out that if it's Kid Icarus Uprising specifically, Bandai Namco has worked with Sakurai in the past because of Smash,
Yeah.
and Uprising is Sakurai's game. He directed it, so it would also make sense on that front because they already have that little connection there.
Yeah, it really is interesting when you think about how many just little areas they've kind of dipped their toes into. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure back when Metroid Prime 4 was delayed to God knows when, it was part of the discussion was that Bandai Namco may have been working on the game, and
Yeah.
at least in some capacity, which is like such a huge IP to be trusting to what is an external company. So, I mean, it really could be anything.
Right. That was the other speculation that I saw a lot, along with Uprising, was people wondering if maybe this was how we were going to get a Metroid Prime, like a Metroid Prime HD or Metroid Prime Trilogy remake or remaster on the Switch. If it would come from this.
Man, remember back like a couple years ago when there was this discourse on Twitter about how, oh, the Metroid Prime trilogy is done, Nintendo's going to release it any day now, they're just waiting for the right opportunity, and here we are.
I think more recent rumors were saying that it would be only the first Metroid Prime.
Yeah.
But then I would imagine it probably be like more of a remake, like not only a simple remaster. So
Yeah, if they're gonna do that,
it
it's
would
gotta
be
be
interesting to see that.
Yeah, I think the rumors were something along the lines of Bandai Namco is working on Prime 4. They tasked they tasked Retro with working on remakes of Prime 1 through 3. And then when Prime 4 ran into development issues, they tasked Retro with working on that instead. And then they ended up putting the remakes of the trilogy on the back burner, and that instead got shifted into being a remake of only one, because doing all three of them would take too much time or too many resources, I believe. But we'll just have to see how that pans out.
Yeah, it's definitely the kind of thing where all we can do is really wait and see. I mean, clearly they're just now hiring for it. That doesn't necessarily mean it couldn't be right around the corner, but it seems vague enough that it could be quite a ways away also. So we may not know for a while. But
I think
it's
the
fun.
listing was for HD background specifically, which doesn't really
It's
really mean too much in the grand scheme of things.
It's really weird that the listing says that it is a game with Nintendo. I mean, Nintendo probably isn't happy with this. I don't know if they really let Bandai Namco let the words out about a game that they are working together. That's probably wasn't supposed to be to let people know about it like that.
Yeah, it is an interesting thing. It seems like it could have, I mean, for all we know, it could have been an error too. I mean, you never know with these kinds of things. The people who make the job listings are not always the ones who are in the know about what's actually being made, you know? But yeah, it is strange. You don't usually see them calling out specific partnerships like that. And yeah, the point about having the wording of HD background is interesting, because to me, like, you know, when I'm thinking about like how I would describe a video game, you know, if I were making something like that's a 3D game, I wouldn't necessarily describe the environment of like a 3D open world game as a HD background. You know, like to me that brings to mind like something that's more along the lines of like a side scroller, or maybe something top down. I don't know. But
Kid Icarus Uprising flying sections?
it could be. I got my fingers crossed just like you do, Nicolas.
Yeah, it's
All right, well,
maybe ATD is referring to the job of making an SD game to 8D. I don't know, like a remaster or a remake, something like that.
Yeah.
It's strange.
yeah,
the
that's
word.
true.
It's possible.
Hey, as long as it's better than the Chrono Cross remake that we talked about last week.
Yeah, for sure.
It's a low bar to clear, but I'm hoping they can do it.
Well, it doesn't say
Alright.
Square or Enix on it, so I think we'll be okay.
yeah, let's hope for the best with that. In other behind-the-scenes Nintendo news / maybe a little bit of speculation, Nintendo also announced last week that they are building a new building. It is, it's called something like Nintendo Research and Development Building 2 or something. It is a giant gray building that they're building right next to their old one, and they might develop games in it. I don't know.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's kind of an expansion. It's really curious because it seems to be something really big. Like we don't see it that often. Nintendo, it's a huge building, and I imagine Furukawa said not a long time ago that they would invest in developments in research, so that's a pretty obvious investment there. Something that I found funny about Nintendo's building is that Nintendo is that company like that make those colorful and fun products, and their buildings is like the most basic building possible, almost like a box, a whole box with some windows. I mean, I understand that they are trying to make the most, I think, like a utilitarian look, to make just enough for them to work there. But I found very interesting their design decision.
It's really funny when you compare them to like I saw something last week about the gaming company Razer. They make a lot of like gaming peripherals and hardware,
Yeah.
and they have a new office opening up, and it looks like it is this like stark like black and neon green building. The inside
Oh.
is like colored like an Alienware or a Razer like gaming laptop.
Yeah.
It's like I don't know how like if you're in there, you probably feel like you're like on Monster Energy drinks all the time.
Yeah, I mean, some companies really invest in those kind of thematic buildings. I mean, here in Brazil, I work as an architect, so I can kind of understand.
See, really, that's so cool.
Yeah, I can kind of understand why Nintendo uses the building like that, because inside it should be really easy to make all the divisions of the spaces and to make the best use of it. So sometimes it is the best solution if you want to make a building that really does the job.
Yeah, I wonder if maybe they're trying to bring. We were just talking about Bandai Namco. It seems to me, at least, like they've been doing a lot of outsourcing some of these games or parts of it to external studios, and I wonder if they're. It seems like maybe they're trying to regress a little bit back to why are we outsourcing a lot of this stuff when we can just be making it in house.
Possibly.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's possible, but I like the sort of flair that outsourcing their stuff has sort of given their games, though, because you don't have that sort of, typical Nintendo mindset that might end up giving something that not necessarily won't be fun. Like, it'll be great because it's Nintendo, obviously, but there is a certain sort of pattern and formula in how they develop their games, that especially if it's one of their lesser titles, like let's just say it's a Mario spin-off game, right? Like especially during the Wii U era where you had stuff like Ultra Smash, right? Mario Tennis Ultra Smash, or Ultra Trash as I called it. And it was just, you have these very empty games, and a lot of people, when you look at it, I'm personally excited for it, but when you look at the new Mario Strikers that's coming out, I am a little worried with the lack of characters. Hopefully there's not a lack of stadiums. I want that content to be there like day one. I don't want to hear that nonsense of like, well, we're going to have free DLC. I don't care if it's paid or free. I want it day one. I don't want to wait 6 months later down the line when I'm probably not going to be playing it anymore. You know what I mean? So the outsourcing I don't think is such a bad thing. Plus, I think they can ramp up the production much more in terms of what they're willing to offer on the system. Because when you think about Switch since 2017, I mean, it's insane how massive the library has grown from just Nintendo alone. Never mind just the library that Switch has just overall, but just from Nintendo's own personal output. They have just put out an insane amount of content, and which is in a stark contrast to Wii U, right? So, and I think that has been sort of helped dramatically because of the aid of, third-party studios and just outsourcing that content, right? And just finally just swallowing your pride and be like, look, it's okay if you let someone else handle Star Fox or Mario, like in the case of Ubisoft, where they're doing Mario and Rabbids, right? So, or also in the case of Ubisoft, where they did, Starlink. So, just it'll be okay. It'll be okay. Bandai helped with Smash Brothers Ultimate. Look how big of a success that was. And then we've heard the countless stories of Sakurai being like, look, without them, Smash Brothers Ultimate probably would not have been a thing.
Right.
So, it's okay. It'll be okay. You can share the love, man. It's okay,
Yeah, but kind of going off of that, like I just can't help but notice. I wonder like how many games is Nintendo making that are solely developed in-house at this point? Because, I mean, just thinking in recent memory, I mean, Fire Emblem has help from Bandai Namco. Mario Strikers is Next Level Games. Kirby was developed by HAL. Those have been their major releases so far just this year. Xenoblade is outsourced to Monolith Soft.
And then you have those second-party releases like Astral Chain.
Nintendo.
Yeah, some companies are
true,
Nintendo
yes.
first party, like Monolith Soft, Next Level Games. They are technically... I'm not sure if they are inside Nintendo's building, but they are Nintendo's. But
Monolith might be. I don't think Next Level Games is.
Yeah, I think Monolith Soft, like parts of the team is and other parts is not. So there's something like this. But what I think is that
you're right. They are pretty integrated. Like Monolith Soft is a Nintendo studio now, and Next Level Games I'm not sure about.
Yeah.
But
I think the thing is Nintendo's internal teams, like the one that makes Zelda, the one that makes Animal Crossing, Splatoon. They like to take their time. Usually we see their games in like 4 or 5 years. The Mario team, Mario Odyssey. I mean, those games, they take a while to come out. Maybe Nintendo's just trying to expand their teams to make, trying to be more efficient. Or just expand in general because they are making a lot of money and they have to make something with that money. And I'm happy to see that they are investing in game production. They are trying to make more games, to make better games. So it's just a kind of natural expansion for a company that is in a very positive position right now.
Yeah, and then not only that, but you have to think about the catalog of games or IP that they have that also still hasn't been touched, right?
Yeah.
Probably the most popular one that we will never stop hearing about until it happens is F-Zero, right?
Yeah.
So, whereas, the Switch with the almost 100 million plus, units they've sold at this point, if they haven't already sold that much, where it is like, there you go. There's a platform that is finally successful with a series that could easily be revitalized, right? And plus, Wii U had a huge success with that one game that looked like F-Zero. It was called like Fast Racing, something like that?
Yeah.
On Wii U?
Fast Racing Neo.
Yeah,
exactly.
Great games.
Yeah, so like Fast Racing Neo, right? And then that got ported over to the Switch not long after the Switch came out, if not soon after, like I want to say probably within a month or two. Yeah. And that also sold very successfully on the Switch. So it's like clearly there's a market there, and you look at just other racing games in general, where, Need for Speed is still pretty successful, right? Grid Legends just came out by EA. That's doing big numbers in terms of reception anyways. I'm seeing a lot of 9s and 9.5s for that. Racing's not going anywhere, man. Racing's always been fantastic. And then, of course, the juggernaut of them all, Forza Horizon 5, right? Now, of course, they're all very different racing games, and F-Zero is very much like a, here, get in your sort of, spaceship-looking thing, and then just, go at 3,000 miles an hour. But, there's a market there, and especially with how loud the fan base has been, once it actually comes out and it happens, it's going to sell like crazy, man. It happened with Kingdom Hearts 3, where we didn't see that. What was the gap between that and Kingdom Hearts 2? Like 10, 15 years? A long time, So usually between every single Final Fantasy, those keep selling more and more and more. So, again, it's just, people are just bereft of, and they need another F-Zero, and I think it'll work out great for them on the Switch, and now's the time to do it. Don't wait for the next system. It's you can do it. But again, if they don't want to do it, that's another thing that they could easily just outsource, right? Just easily. So
Yeah. And I did double check, and yes, as we suspected, Nintendo did buy Next Level Games in just last year. I couldn't remember if it was them or someone else. So. Yeah. Well, hey, at the end of the day, if it means more great games, I don't think anyone's going to be complaining about that.
Yeah.
True.
One last thing I wanted to mention about the building, so I'm not sure if you mentioned it, is that it is expected to be completed by December 2027. So it's going to be quite a while before we even see anything come out of this.
Wow. Yeah.
Place your bets now. Do you think we'll get it before we get Nintendo's next console?
F-Zero?
No, I think we'll definitely get another console before that building gets made. I mean, if anything, when you think about it, it's like, I mean, they're already putting an insane amount of resources into expanding Super Nintendo World into Universal Studios in California, I believe, or
True.
Florida, one of those.
Yeah.
So, and then that'll be opened in 2023, I believe, right? So,
In time for
and think
Mother
about-
3 also.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Okay, do you think we'll get Metroid Prime 4 before this new building is done? I'm not sure.
I
That's
think
the
so.
question we should all be asking.
That might be a little risky. It's not a guarantee. All right. Well, let's move on to our next topic. There's this little franchise you may or may not have heard of called Ace Attorney. It's had quite a few games at this point. And last year we got the Great Ace Attorney Chronicles, which bundled together two games that had not yet been released in America. And that game, it was just announced last week, sold 500,000 copies. Which to me doesn't sound like a lot, but Nicolas, didn't you mention that this was better than they were expecting, right?
Yeah, so I mean, this is coming from the Capcom leaks that happened a few years ago, which is, not the best, but from those documents, apparently expected lifetime sales for the game were, I think, roughly 310,000, so selling almost 200,000 more than that, especially for a series as relatively niche as Ace Attorney is huge. And I mean, hopefully it'll have a pretty decent impact on the rest of the series, because there's been a bit of a drought in terms of games. At this point, I think it's been 6 years since we've gotten the last new mainline game, since we've gotten Spirit of Justice.
That was a
And
great
still waiting on Ace Attorney 7. We did get Great Ace Attorney in the meantime, which is really nice. Those games are really good. I'm really glad that Great Ace Attorney Chronicles sold as much as it did, because it's fantastic.
True.
But I'm really hoping this is going to be the trigger. Like, Capcom is going to see this and be like, wow, maybe this is worth investing into. Maybe, we can port over the second trilogy to the Switch. Maybe we can start developing 7. Maybe we can get Ace Attorney Investigations 2 ported in the West. That would be great. I'm just hoping something positive will come out of this, and I think it will because of those sales numbers.
Yeah, I hope it sort of has its sort of Monster Hunter moment, right? Where Monster Hunter World just sold an insane amount, more than I think anyone anticipated. And Monster Hunter's always had like a huge legacy and a sort of passionate following. But Monster Hunter World brought in people like anyone and everyone on every platform, right? So, some could argue that it's because, it finally went multi-platform, so it wasn't stuck on just a Nintendo system like it was before, where it was on 3DS, right? And then of course, Wii U with 4 Ultimate. But Monster Hunter World just really helped explode that franchise, and then we got a movie out of that later on, and then I believe there's there's plenty of manga, Monster Hunter manga, and of course Monster Hunter Stories, right? We got that Monster Hunter Stories 2. We got that on Switch last year, I believe, which was an incredible game. And so yeah, I want Ace Attorney so bad to have its sort of Monster Hunter moment, right? Of like, all right, clearly, outside of a passionate following, clearly we can reach even more people, and there's still very much a healthy future for this franchise. And so let's just start ramping up production, rather than just porting some of the older stuff. All right, let's start giving people the new stuff, and just having all this great content. But it's weird to think about that too, because I always felt like Ace Attorney was popular, but I guess clearly maybe because I was always in that bubble, but I guess it was never really as popular as I expected. Just because when I think of Ace Attorney, I also think of not just the games, but expanding outside of that, where Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney does have an anime, right? 2 seasons, I believe, of an anime.
Yeah.
And, and there's also a manga, and along with, plenty of merchandise, official merchandise and stuff like that.
I think the series was more successful on the GBA, on the DS, during that initial era. But then over the years, similar to Professor Layton, over the years the series kinda lost its popularity. But it still is a big name for Capcom.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it's a visual novel, so it already has that kind of niche audience to it. So it's
True.
It's a hard sell.
Oh, I just want to make a comment. I made the huge mistake of watching the whole anime instead of playing the game. And now I know the solution of all the mysteries.
That's true.
I guess it's a good way to get an abbreviated experience if you don't have the time to play through all the games.
It is true.
Yeah, I mean, I just checked, and the Ace Attorney series, as of September of last year, it has sold almost 9 million copies between all of its games and ports and re-releases, which is not an insubstantial number. But yeah, I mean, compared to something like Monster Hunter,
A lot of games also.
Right. Oh yeah, a lot. Yes, across a lot of
10
games for
titles
sure.
or 11, I think.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I would love to see more Ace Attorney games. I do feel like part of its charm, I mean, I know this was originally, a Game Boy series, but I think it really hit its popularity in the DS days. And at least to me, when I think of Ace Attorney, I always think of just the dual screen gameplay and, the way they implemented that hardware just feels like a huge part of that franchise.
Was like perfect for the system.
Yeah, right. Yeah, totally. And I mean, it doesn't seem like much was lost when they brought over Ace Attorney, the Great Ace Attorney Chronicles to the Switch. So I don't think that's a reason for them to not make a new game. But yeah, there's got to be something going on that they're just like, it's just hard for them to justify right now.
Yeah, it's kind of refreshing to see, if the leaks are real, to see that Capcom had realistic expectations for a remaster of a niche series. Because a lot of the time we see those companies releasing a game with crazy expectations, and then it's a niche series and it won't sell that well, and it didn't sell well, so we won't make more sequels. So it's nice to see that they had a realistic expectation for it.
Yeah, it could have been a lot worse for sure. It could have been like, we set it so high and it didn't sell well, so now the whole series is canceled.
Didn't sell 4 million copies in the first week?
The series is over.
Again, this is Capcom, so they're realistic. This isn't Square Enix.
Yeah.
So where everything performs below expectations. So.
Yeah. No, it's hoping for the best for all those Ace Attorney fans out there. All right, we got one more big topic to round out the show today. And this one is not necessarily a huge part of the Switch's immediate future, but Vicarious Visions, who has been around a long time, they are now fully merged with Activision Blizzard. And, it's come at an interesting time because we actually have been seeing some output in the last couple years from Vicarious Visions on the Switch. We got the Tony Hawk Pro Skater 1 and 2 remake back in 2020. And then we got the Crash trilogy in 2017. But before that, they were mostly working on Skylanders and Guitar Hero, and it's been a while since they put out something truly new. So how do you guys feel about this? I mean, do you think, now that Activision Blizzard is owned by Microsoft, we might see a little bit more from them? Or there's so many mergers going on right now. I could see this going any number of ways.
It's definitely hard to keep up with all the mergers. It's interesting. It's interesting. I think they'll do good under there. Hopefully they'll have more creative freedom to not do stuff that is licensed and whatnot. Because I'm looking through their sort of developed games right now, and I'm seeing a bunch of what most people would consider, at least from their early work, a lot of people would probably consider this stuff shovelware. Like I'm just looking at stuff like, where is it? So like Barbie Magic Genie Adventure, like that, on Game Boy
classic.
Color.
All-time classic.
Yeah, system sellers. The Wild Thornberries, Rambler, Pro Darts, Blues Clues, Blues Alphabet Book, Rescue Heroes, Fire Frenzy, Monsters Inc., Kelly Club, Clubhouse Fan. It's just, and that's more or less what you start seeing, at first. But then you start going down a little bit, and basically once 2003 hit, then you start seeing some interesting stuff, right? Where they did sort of dabble in the more, just things that were more worthwhile. For example, Star Wars Jedi Knight 2, Jedi Outcast, right? That's usually beloved by a lot of people. Let me see here. The Tony Hawk's Underground, of course. Crash Nitro Kart. Jedi Academy. But then, of course, it's weird because then they start going back into the shovelware for a little bit, like they worked on Shrek 2, as we all fondly remember.
Of course.
The That's So Raven video game on Game Boy Advance. That's why I got my Game Boy Advance. I don't know about you guys, but
there's definitely some like hardcore collectors out there who are like, oh yeah, I have every Vicarious Visions game.
Yeah.
Hell, Dennis,
full wall.
You badmouth that.
Yeah, come on, man. Don't hate on Blue's Clues, man.
But yeah, no, like basically over the course of the last couple of years, though, then they've been been taken a lot more seriously, and their talents have been put to use. So, like you were saying, just a lot of basically Guitar Heroes. So I'm seeing Aerosmith, World Tour, Guitar Hero 5, Band Hero, Modern Hits, Warriors of Rock, and then you start seeing a bunch of Skylanders, right, since 2011 all the way to 2016, right? So Spyro's Adventure, Cloud Patrol, Lost Islands, Battlegrounds, so on and so forth. And then 2017, they helped out with Destiny 2 on Microsoft Windows, and of course they helped out with the Insane trilogy as well, and then the Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 and 2, and most recently Diablo 2 Resurrected. So that's kind of their most recent work right there. So yeah, they've been actually like, putting their talents to use. But yeah, it was a rough start from what I can tell. And but I think it'll be good because, again, clearly just from basically post 2008, they're clearly a studio that knows what they're doing and is a talented group of people. So I think it'll be good, not just for Blizzard Activision, but also, them acquiring Vicarious Visions also means that by default, Microsoft gets that, right? So
right.
So that's just going to expand their portfolio even more, and with that Microsoft money, I mean, anything's possible. So who knows? Maybe they'll make something original and really showcase their talents in a way that we've never seen before.
Yeah. I hope, I mean, I've been kind of following everything going on with all the drama around Activision Blizzard, and I think, regardless of how people feel about all that, I think, my big concern is I just want to make sure that everyone, who is involved in the merger is being, hopefully it ends up being a positive thing for them with Microsoft's recent buyout. I think that's just my main takeaway from all this, because they're no longer even being called Vicarious Visions. They're now Blizzard Albany. So, I'm just hoping, personally that this comes along with maybe some culture changes with everything going on at Activision Blizzard. And hopefully, the teams that have been making these, frankly, just really solid remakes the past couple of years. I mean, I get the sense that now that Microsoft owns all this IP, they're probably going to want to do something with it. And, if the people who still made these games, even if they're, being relabeled as a new studio now, Blizzard Albany, if the people are still there, we could still potentially get more games along this line. I mean, there wasn't a huge, between the time that like Tony Hawk's The Pro Skater, the remakes were announced and released, it wasn't a huge amount of time. I feel like it was kind of a similar deal with the Crash trilogy. It wasn't a huge amount of time between when that game was announced and released. So, they could be working on something right now. They've been putting out games more and more often lately. So, who knows? Maybe there's something in the pipeline.
Yeah, with how messy the situation with Blizzard and Activision is at the moment, it's kind of hard to know exactly what this means, what this will mean for the future. As Nick said, we expect that Microsoft will try to make things right in the company and to not abandon some of those IPs like Tony Hawk, like Crash. I think a lot of people were kind of worried that maybe Activision would not develop more Crash games, more of those cartoon experience. I don't think Vicarious Vision worked on Crash 4, but I think they made the Crash remaster, and Crash 4 was Toys for Bob. But it's interesting to see if Microsoft will develop those more cartoony games from Activision, like Spyro, like Crash, to see if they will try to maintain those IPs. I mean, the IPs are not tied to Vicarious Vision, so they can give to another to another studio. They can make whatever they want with it.
Right. Yeah. I mean, now that the IP is in Microsoft's hands, yeah, anything is fair game for the most part. But just an interesting development in the world of games. Anytime studios get merged into each other. My personal opinion is I'm not always a huge fan of seeing all these studios get absorbed because I think, just Activision's output just in general over the past decade has just changed so dramatically. We're seeing less games from these smaller teams as they get absorbed into bigger studios. So personally, I'm just hoping that that's not something that we lose in the future. All right, well, that about wraps up our show for the week. Thank you, everyone, so much for tuning in. But before we go, what has everyone been playing? Or what are you guys planning on playing in the near future? I'll start. This has been a pretty busy week for me personally, so I haven't had a ton of time to just sit down with my Switch and play something. But I've been getting back into Minecraft a little bit, which is not something I thought I would be getting into anytime soon.
I've got that spring sale going on right now, too.
Well, yeah, sometimes it hits me. I'm like, oh man, I have this on my phone, and I've been working on this just creative, world for on and off. It's just been sitting on my phone for probably a good 4 or 5 years at this point. And when I'm sitting in line somewhere or I'm on a plane and my Switch is dead or whatever, I'll just build a few things in this creative world, and it's a good head clearer,
It is. I've always loved, well, not always, but I've recently, anyways, in the last couple of years, sort of found a new appreciation for Minecraft. And there is something that is, especially when you play creatively, power to the people who, want to play survival mode, but in terms of creative mode, there's something that is immensely cathartic about it. And it's easy to get lost, especially with the sort of serene music that, really just kind of helps you not only calm down, but focus on whatever it is you're working on, whether you are just creating something entirely new or just kind of exploring at your own pace, but with, less repercussions because you're not in survival mode. So, but I've really grown to appreciate it over the years, especially, playing online on personalized worlds, via realms and whatnot, and, with friends, and having those servers available to us, where, over the years, we have all sort of moved away from where we initially grew up. So it's a perfect place to sort of come back and just hang out. It's just such a great community game, whether you're doing something or not, but it's I've just really fallen in love with it over the last couple of years, and like you, Nick, I also have it on my phone, so occasionally I'll just open it up and check the store, because they always have, especially when they have some sort of event, they're always giving away sort of free worlds or free skins and stuff like that. So I like downloading all of that and just seeing all the creativity that people are coming out with, because then in turn being able to play those sort of specialized scenarios and worlds sort of inspires me too, not just in Minecraft but out of Minecraft as well. Just that sort of creativity helps just get the brain electricity just going. And it's a wonderful game.
That's a cool take. Yeah, it's definitely an interesting social space. I've never really gotten super into that aspect of it. For me, it's very much just kind of almost like a meditative experience. You're just I'm gonna develop this little plot of land, and I think I'll just build a little store or something. It's just good little way to de-stress at the end of a long day, for me at least.
Absolutely.
Dennis, what have you been playing lately?
So lately, two things. Recently, we put up a review for Tormented Souls up at NintendoEverything.com. So the last week or so was definitely dedicated to that. Tormented Souls is definitely not going to be for everyone, but that doesn't mean it's a bad game. I actually really, really had a great time with it. But it's definitely something that's more catered towards people who grew up with survival horror in the late 90s and early 2000s, right? So we're talking about stuff like, never mind stuff like Resident Evil and Silent Hill, but a big emphasis on when games heavily utilized fixed camera angles and tank controls, right? So,
right.
And a lot of those controls and sort of methods of perspective don't really translate to a lot of people in this day and age. I don't know why. I mean, I kind of get it to a degree. There's definitely quality of life aspects to it. But personally, I mean, I don't know. I felt at home when I was playing it, and because I'm such a big fan of the older Resident Evils, especially, I mean, I've replayed, Resident Evil 2, never mind the remake, but the original Resident Evil 2 just so many times. Same thing with 3 and, 0 and 1. I mean, basically 1 through 4 I've replayed so many times. And it never bothers me. It never bothers me. Games like that, games like Parasite Eve, right? Games like Dino Crisis, tank controls have never been a problem for me. So,
it's
but I know
it's like sipping on a fine wine, is what you're saying.
it is.
It's an
Yeah,
acquired
basically,
taste.
it's definitely an acquired taste. Yeah. However, they emphasize the tank controls, but you absolutely do not have to play with the tank controls. You can just use your left stick and have a full 360 motion, so you're okay with that. So, to make it more palatable to people who might not be used to those sorts of games from, way back when. But it's a beautiful love letter to, the games that sort of started it all and created this juggernaut of a genre that has spanned just these multi-million-dollar properties, right? Like Resident Evil, like Silent Hill, and stuff even beyond it, that have seen cult following, stuff like Haunting Grounds, right? Clock Tower, Alone in the Dark, Rule of Rose. I mean, the list goes on, right? So it's just a wonderful, wonderful love letter, but it's not without fault, and it certainly has its frustrations, and I think that comes from it being almost a little bit too authentic, right? So,
Sure.
and yeah, primarily with how the saving system works, which is very much akin to how ink ribbons were in Resident Evil. So, but you use more like tapes this time around, but they are few and far between. So even when I'm holding on, even when I find a tape, even though I want to immediately save, I still try to see how much further I can go while holding on without having to save. Before I'm absolutely in a situation where I absolutely need to save because I don't want to lose all that progress, if I die. And you will die. So
Yeah, that's not a mechanic you see too often nowadays. That does sound like it could be either really good if it's your kind of thing, or it could definitely turn a lot of people off.
Yeah, and of course,
yeah.
I have a soft spot for it, so obviously it worked out for me, and I was in favor of the game, like from for the review. But again, it's not going to click with everyone. This is a very tailored and specific demographic this game is going to be for. But even if you want to try something new to sort of see what games were like back then, this is also a great place to be because it does have those enhanced controls and enhanced sort of mechanics that aren't going to be present in some older games like in the PS1 and Nintendo 64 era. Uh-huh. So if you want to experience that without going completely all the way back in time, Tormented Souls might be a good place to start for someone like that. It's something like Tormented Souls or even Song of Horror. I would highly recommend Song of Horror as well.
Love it.
But yeah, awesome. In addition to that, I've just been playing a lot of Judgment, which is another game created by the good folks over at Ryu Ga Gotoku Studios. They're most famously known for the Yakuza series, and but just been playing a whole lot of that, and I love that series, and I love that studio, and I love Sega, and I love everything about it. So
yeah, I'll definitely want to talk with you more about that sometime in the near future because I love those games too. All right, Luiz, what have you been playing lately?
So, like I said last week, I'm still playing Jedi Fallen Order, but I just remembered I also started playing with my girlfriend's It Takes Two for the first time. I waited.
Brilliant game. Brilliant.
I waited for a long time for it to appear on Game Pass, and now we are finally starting to play. And it is just a delight. It's a fantastic game, really a kind of multiplayer experience that I never had before. The level design is nothing like totally new or crazy, but the way it ties everything to the story and how fun every level with some different mechanic with how they make the two characters interact with each other. It's really great. I think so far I'm having a really good time with it.
Yeah, how does your girlfriend like it? Because it's so funny. I just played through that game recently with my partner as well, and she's not a huge gamer, but she fell in love with that game, and she had a, picked up the controls pretty easily and was loving the art and the gameplay itself. And
Yeah, I mean it's pretty accessible. There's nothing crazy. She loved it, but she's also a big gamer, so she didn't have any problems with playing it at all. But both of us are really enjoying the game. It is just a kind of an experience that it's really really rare to see a game that goes like with a kind of a game that would usually be a single player experience, but then you have this experience all created specific for two people to play together from the beginning to end. It is just really great.
yeah, no, I'm really glad that game exists, and I really hope we see a lot more like that now that It Takes Two is
Yeah.
out there, because it feels like there could be a kind of a return to this idea of playing together on the TV. I love seeing more of that.
True.
Nicholas, what about you? What have you been playing lately?
So very surprisingly, still playing Xenoblade 2. But other than that, because of Forgotten Land, it kind of gave me the itch to revisit some past Kirby games. And so because of that, I've been playing through Kirby Superstar with a friend through Nintendo Switch Online. And that's been a very interesting experience because it's really made me notice how different those past games were from the more modern iterations. Even just from like a physics standpoint, Kirby and the partner allies control very differently from what they would in even more modern 2D games like Star Allies or Planet Robot Triple Deluxe. The game in general is honestly quite a bit harder than some of those more recent games. Things kill you much more easily.
I remember that too.
Yeah, it's a little. It definitely was a shock where you'll get hit like 4 or 5 times by an enemy, or you'll get hit like twice by Gordo, and it's game over.
Yeah, Superstar was the first Kirby game that I played, and I do remember it being a very tight, very precise game that you really like. You've kind of got to know what you're doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's bizarre. It's also very interesting just because, like instead of having this one single campaign, you have all these disconnected like mini campaigns that you end up putting together to get basically your full game, which is it's a very odd style.
Yeah, I always found it weird. I tried to play one time and I didn't understand if I was playing the main campaign or if I was playing a side campaign, and then someone explained it to me. Was Superstar directed by Sakurai? Yet?
It was.
It was?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah.
If I recall, Sakurai directed Kirby's Adventure and Superstar, and he came back for Superstar Ultra.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Got it. Well, that's cool. Yeah, Kirby is definitely on the public's mind right now. I've been kind of having an itch to go back and play some of those older games too. So, not like I have enough free time for that, but it's a nice thought. All right, folks. Well, that is our show for the week. Thank you everyone for tuning in to listen to us ramble about video game and video game news for a good solid hour. We will be back next week, and if you like the show, feel free to let us know. Drop us a comment. Let us know what you like, what you don't like. Our email is in the show notes as well. So if you have any suggestions for the show or you have any topic ideas you want to submit, you can reach out to us that way. We are also now on all these streaming platforms. So if you don't want to listen to us here on YouTube, you can also check us out on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Amazon, Audible, Stitcher, Overcast. I mean, you name it, we're pretty much out there at this point. But thank you all for your continued support, and we will be back next week with what is new and exciting in the world of Nintendo. See you guys later.